Hi everyone, in this video we're going to look at one of the most iconic bottling ranges of Macallan, and that is the Macallan Handwritten Label Series, or often known as the Red Ribbon Series. Before we start this video, let's do one thing. Let's get this box off the cascade here so we've got more space. And this is the bottle that we're going to be talking about. It's a Macallan Handwritten Label. It's a 1938 vintage, this one actually, and it's up for sale on our website for just under £18,000. So, but this is one of the most iconic series of Macallan bottlings, and there's quite a lot of interesting facts and features about this. So let's go into it. The first thing to note, it's called the Handwritten Label Series, or sometimes called the Red Ribbon Series. Now it gets that name from the label on the front. So let's just see that. You can see on the front there, it's got a handwritten script style font on the label. Now, a big misnomer about this is that everyone thinks, or some people may think, that they're handwritten labels. They're not. They are printed labels. It just has a handwritten script as the font. So on every single label from the 1938, you'll see that the position of the text is in exactly the same position. And if you use a loop or a high quality magnifying glass, you'll see that this is actually printed on the label. So all the bottles are bottled at 43% ABV, and they all have a screw cap with a gold foiled capsule over it. So this one is covered in parafilm just to preserve the level. And as you can see on this one, the level itself is quite good, but it does have quite a severe tear to the label, but we'll come back to that. Now, there are 5 vintages that were released as part of the Handwritten Label Series. So it's the 1938, which this one belongs to, the 1940, the 1950, the 57, and the 73. Now, these are all vintage bottlings, but they're not age statement bottlings. So none of the bottles in this series are what we call age statement. They don't say 18, 25, 30 years old on them. It just gives the distillation year. So for all intents and purposes, this could be 3-year-old whiskey. We just don't know. And I don't even think Macallan will have a record of what the age statements of these bottles will be. Now, they were all bottled between 1980 and 1983, and that's exciting to me, and I'll come back to that in a second. But looking at the label again, they're all on these cream labels, and on the top right hand side of the bottle, on top right hand side of the label, they all carry an edition number. Now, I don't know, and I don't believe Macallan know, how many were released from each series, but they were released in quite high numbers apart from the 1973. Now, it was also presented in a similar box to the boxes that you get with the Macallan 25-year-old anniversary malts. So it's these pine boxes, very well constructed, all stenciled on the front. You pull the lid, cover off, and you've got your, which anyone who knows the anniversary malts will recognise this straw inside that makes a mess everywhere, and the cardboard insert. It also came with a little information label inside it, so about malt whisky, about Macallan, the Macallan legend, the secrets of the sherry oak cask. It's not really a secret if it's in this, and beyond description. So this was actually originally part of the bottle, and it was tucked in to the side of the bottle inside the red ribbon. And this red ribbon itself actually has a little wax seal on there as well. Now, as you can see, this bottle has unfortunately got quite a big tear on the label, and that's because of the nature of this box. So when this bottle is lying down inside the box, what happened, the owner of this bottle, we're just brokers, this is our bottle, we're selling it on behalf of a client. When that bottle was laid down in there originally, someone shut the lid and took that big scrape out of the label. Fortunately, the big scrape out of the label is still present, and so is the information leaflet. So it's quite a complete bottling, but it does have that unfortunate tear to the label. Now, you would have thought that that wouldn't make any difference to the price, but it does. You know, there are retails, this bottle retails in the UK for around £30,000 at the minute, and this one's priced at £17,495 to reflect the fact that it's got that tear. But this is the thing with the whiskey market now. The bottles are collector's items. It's not necessarily the whiskey inside that's important, it's about every single aspect. The whiskey has to be in good condition, and as you can see, this bottle's got a good level, and that's why we've protected the capsule with parafilm. So but it does have that tear, which was arguably a design flaw from the original packaging. Now, one of the interesting features about this bottle is that the label says single Highland malt Scotch whisky, all very standard, but distilled and bottled by Macallan Handwritten, Craigellachie, Scotland. Now, that's interesting because this is one of the earliest instances of an official distillery release that was also bottled by the distillery. Now, prior to this, and I've got to thank Cheryl at the Macallan Archives for giving me this information, it's understood that around 1979-1980 there was a change in Scottish or UK legislation that meant that whisky could be bottled on site. Now, prior to this, whisky had to be bottled by an independent company. Well, that's the way that we understand it at the moment. It had to be bottled elsewhere. So if you go back to the 1950s, Macallan bottles were bottled by a company called Campbell, Hope and King. And they were bottled from the 1950s to the 1970s, and then Gordon and MacPhail took over the role of the appointed or licensed bottler for Macallan from the 1970s to the 1980s. But if you look on any whisky bottle, there's a change between 1979 and 1980, and instead of it saying, you know, distilled at the Macallan distillery and bottled by Gordon and MacPhail, you all of a sudden see the bottlings being brought in-house. So although there have been previous bottlings, official bottlings of Macallan, it's my understanding that the Red Ribbon series or the Handwritten Label series is actually the first series of bottles that were both released and bottled by Macallan. Now, to me, that's interesting. You might have other ideas, but it really does add to the scarcity and the collectability of these bottles. You'll notice at the bottom of all the labels on the Handwritten Label series that it says distributed by or distributed and imported by, and then a name underneath it. Now, this is because several companies were responsible for the distribution and export or import of these bottles rather than it just being Macallan. So the people who exported and were responsible for the exports of these bottles were you had Atkinson and Baldwin Company here in the UK, you had Carrard over in France, Fratelli Rinaldi in Italy, the big famous Italian bottler and importer there. You've got Gordon and MacPhail, also based in the UK, Phillips Pike from New Zealand, a company that I'm going to destroy the name of unfortunately, Pro Nibelate Ebert Hansel Company from Hamburg in Germany, Spey Traders in Australia, that one's much easier, and also a company called Verco in Belgium. So you will find these bottles from the same vintages but all carrying slightly different names. You might have two 1938s with Atkinson, Baldwin and Co, or you might have a Gordon and MacPhail bottling, and the name that's on the bottom of these does make a slight bit of difference but not a significant amount of difference. As we've mentioned, there were 5 editions of the Handwritten Label series. The first one released, I understand, is this one, the 1938 that was released in 1980. It wasn't an exclusive bottling, meaning that you'll find it with several distributors and importers' names on it, and it wasn't specifically bottled for anyone in particular. Now, the 1940 bottle was actually released in 1981, and you'll find a special edition that was exclusively bottled for the German market. However, being the whisky industry in the 1980s, there is another version of the 1940 label that wasn't exclusive to Germany and was available through other distributors and importers. The 1950 bottle, again, it wasn't exclusive to anybody, and in actual fact is the most common bottle that you will find on the market today. The 1957 bottling was bottled in celebration of the 25th anniversary of Fratelli Rinaldi. Now, Rinaldi are very famous Italian importers, and they also distributed other brands like Charles Heidsieck Champagne, and in the 1980s they really brought Macallan to the fore, and I think they sold over 120,000 bottles of Macallan in the 1980s, which is significant given the size of the market at that time. Now, all of the 1957 bottles were exclusive for that 25th anniversary, but you will also find it in other countries. It wasn't necessarily exclusive to the Italian market. Now, the rarest of the rare with this Handwritten Label series is the 1973 edition. Now, this was bottled for the 10th anniversary. This was bottled for the 10th anniversary of the Opium Society in Canada. Now, the Opimium Society in Canada was a wine and whisky appreciation group. It's still around today if you want to find them out. And it was produced specifically for them. And I understand it was only sold through or to Opimium Society members. Now, with all of these other bottles, you'll find them available online, and you'll probably find records for them at auction too. The exception being the 1973, because you cannot find it anywhere. It is the rarest of the rare of this handwritten label series. So even though the vintage is significantly younger, 1973 versus 1938, it can fetch quite a lot more if any appeared on the market. So there we have it. It's the Macallan Handwritten Label Series. They're beautiful bottles. They're not handwritten, but they're printed labels, remember? But they're very well presented, all with their wooden cases, and they are very collectible. Now, as mentioned, we've got this bottle available for sale for one of our customers at the moment. It's priced at $17,495. And if you've got a bottle of the Handwritten series by Macallan, and you want it valued or sold, and you want to understand which way is best to sell it, whether it's through our shop or brokerage, or should you sell at auction, please visit marklittler.com for more information. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, because we've got lots more content with lots more rare bottles coming this way.